In October 2024, something quietly appeared on the streaming platform Tubi that made over 2 million people stop scrolling in their tracks. For more than 40 years, this footage had stayed hidden in studio vaults, gathering dust, unseen by the public. At the time it was filmed, networks reportedly found it too raw, perhaps too honest, to broadcast. It wasn't a sketch, and it wasn't a routine. It was Red Skelton, the man who had spent a lifetime making America laugh, finally taking off the mask. In this recently released final performance, Red turned the camera into a confession booth. He didn't tell jokes, he told the truth. He spoke of family losses, career heartbreaks, and the heavy silence that follows the applause. Viewers who watched it described the experience as intrusive yet beautiful, like reading someone's private diary. But the question remains, why did this footage stay hidden for 4 decades? And what did the clown prince of comedy have to say that was so powerful it took a new generation to finally hear it? To understand the ending, we have to go back to the beginning. Red Skelton was born in 1913 in Vincennes, Indiana, into a world that had already taken so much from him. 2 months before he was born, his father, a clown in the Hagenbeck-Wallace Circus, passed away. Red entered the world, inheriting a legacy of laughter he would never personally know. His mother was left to raise 4 boys alone in crushing poverty. Red didn't have a childhood in the traditional sense. He had a survival story. He sold newspapers on street corners at age 7, not just to make money, but to perform. He realized early on that if he could make a potential customer laugh, they were more likely to buy a paper. Humor wasn't a hobby, it was his currency. It was a shield against the cold reality of a hungry home. That hunger stayed with him, shaping his comedic voice. He learned that comedy could bridge any gap, soften any hardship, and for a few moments make the world feel a little less empty. By age 10, Red had already left the classroom for the School of Hard Knocks, joining a traveling medicine show. He slept in barns and wagons, sending every penny back to his mother. It was here, on dusty makeshift stages, that he honed the physical skills that would become his trademark: the pratfalls, the pantomime, the rubber-faced reactions. He learned to perform without needing words, a skill that would later define his genius. But his career truly found its footing when he met Edna Stillwell. She was more than just his wife, she was the architect of his success. Edna wrote his material, managed his business, and refined his raw talent into an act that could conquer radio. Together, they created characters that America fell in love with. Like the dim-witted but lovable Clem Cadiddlehopper. By the late 1930s, Red Skelton wasn't just a former circus boy. He was a radio sensation, his voice beaming into millions of living rooms, offering a gentle, silly escape from the troubles of the world. However, the higher Red rose, the heavier the pressure became. Success in Hollywood is often a double-edged sword, and for Red, the demand for constant laughter began to take its toll. He gave everything to his audience, every ounce of energy, every spark of creativity. He was known to work himself to the point of collapse, driven by a deep-seated need to please, perhaps trying to fill the void left by the father he never met. While the public saw a man of boundless energy, those close to him saw the cost. The Clown Prince was fighting a battle between the joy he gave others and the peace he couldn't find for himself. He faced personal demons and the overwhelming stress of maintaining a career at the very top. But like a true professional, when the red light of the camera turned on, the pain vanished and the smile appeared. His transition to film with MGM was seamless. He became a box office star, bringing his physical comedy to the big screen in hits like Bathing Beauty. But at the height of his movie fame, Red faced the kind of heartbreak that no parent should ever endure. In the mid-1940s, his young son, Richard, was diagnosed with leukemia. In an era where such a diagnosis was a death sentence, Red had to continue being the funniest man in America, while his heart was breaking in private. He would spend his days on set, performing slapstick routines and pratfalls, and his nights at the hospital. This period defined the depth of Red's character. He learned to compartmentalize his grief, pouring his emotions into his work. When Richard eventually passed away, something in Red changed forever. The laughter he produced became deeper, more resonant. He wasn't just being funny anymore. He was proving that joy could survive even the darkest sorrow. When television arrived, it seemed invented for Red Skelton. The Red Skelton Show premiered in 1951 and became an instant institution. For 2 decades, he was a welcome guest in American homes. This is where he perfected his most enduring character, Freddie the Freeloader. Freddie was a hobo who never spoke, a pantomime masterpiece who communicated entirely through expression and movement. Freddie wasn't a figure of pity, he was a figure of dignity. Through Freddie, Red channeled his own childhood poverty and his empathy for the underdog. He showed the world that you didn't need money to have heart. The silence of Freddie the Freeloader was louder than any joke. It was pure artistry, connecting with audiences on a level that went beyond simple comedy. It was here that Red solidified his legacy, not just as a comedian, but as a master of the human condition. But time moves on, and tastes change. By the late 1960s, the television landscape was shifting. Networks were looking for edgier, younger content. Despite still having high ratings, Red's gentle, variety-style comedy was deemed old-fashioned by executives. In a move that shocked the industry, his show was canceled. It was a harsh blow. The man who had helped build the medium of television was unceremoniously shown the door. Following the cancellation, Red faced significant financial hurdles and personal struggles. The world seemed to be moving on without him. But Red Skelton was a survivor. He had been poor before, and he knew how to rebuild. He didn't let the silence of the networks silence his creativity. In his later years, Red found a new voice, not through a microphone, but through a paintbrush. He retreated to his home and began to paint. His subjects were almost always clowns, colorful, expressive, and often with a single tear running down a cheek. Painting became his sanctuary. It was where he processed the grief of losing his son, the end of his TV career, and the ups and downs of his life. He found solace in the canvas. Remarkably, he became a successful artist, with his paintings selling for thousands of dollars. He once said, "I paint the things I feel." The world began to see Red, not just as a retired comedian, but as a sensitive soul who had simply switched mediums. He hadn't stopped performing. He had just frozen the performance in time, capturing the emotion of the clown forever. This brings us back to October 2024. The footage released on Tubi was a revelation because it bridged the gap between the public icon and the private man. This uncensored farewell special, filmed near the end of his career, stripped away the characters. There was no Clem, no Freddie, just Red. In these tapes, he spoke candidly about his life's journey. He likened the experience to opening a diary. He talked about the struggle of maintaining his sobriety and the pain of his personal tragedies without the filter of a punchline. He admitted to his insecurities and the fear that he would be forgotten. It was a raw display of vulnerability that had been hidden for over 40 years because it was deemed too sad for a comedy special. But for the 2 million viewers who tuned in, it wasn't sad, it was healing. It showed the immense strength it took to be Red Skelton. It revealed that his comedy was a choice, a deliberate act of love in the face of hardship. The release of these tapes has introduced Red Skelton to a generation that never saw him live. Young people are discovering his pantomimes on social media, marveling at a man who could make you cry without saying a word. Red Skelton once said, "If by chance someday you're not feeling well, and you should remember some silly thing I've said or done, and it brings back a smile to your face or a chuckle to your heart, then my purpose as your clown has been fulfilled." The hidden tapes proved that he achieved that purpose, not by hiding his pain, but by eventually sharing it. The diary is finally open, and the entry is clear. The clown had a broken heart, but he used the pieces to build a legacy of joy that evidently will never fade away.